I'm here to give a talk at the European Institute at Columbia University on ostracism and democratic self-defense in Athens. So I'd like to describe what ostracism is initially. So it was a political procedure that was used in antiquity. We know mainly of ancient Athens from 508 until 415 approximately BC. So for 1 century more or less during the classic period. It was introduced by Clisthenes during the Democratic Revolution as an act of conceding power to the demos. According to Forstag, the politics of exile was a principal means of sovereign power, exercising sovereign power in antiquity. So handing over the power to send someone on political exile to the demos was actually an act of conceding power to the demos. Now, how it actually worked was that every year the citizens were asked if they want to have an ostracism, approximately in January. And if the majority agreed, 2.5 months later they would have the actual ostracism. And this means that all the citizens who wanted would gather in the agora, no picnics, and cast a potsherd, which in Greek was called ostrakon, with the name of the person who they didn't like. And this person was most of the times, all the times, either a member of the council or a strategos, so one of the leadership figures of the Athenian polis. And the person who would, and one important characteristic was that unless 6,000 citizens participated in this ostrakophoria, as it was called, the vote was not valid. So first they would count whether the quota was reached, and afterwards they would count again to determine who had collected most of the votes. So from this procedure that was used in antiquity, I'd like to keep two main aspects. The one is how it regulated it was. It was organized in a way to prevent it from being manipulated for political reasons. So the fact that it was taking place at fixed times every year, regularly, meant that it was not subject to the public sentiment whenever this public sentiment judged that someone was misbehaving or whatever. And it was also not possible to have it more than once a year. That was the maximum number of times an ostracism could be held. The fact that it was regular yet optional meant that there was a two-stage procedure that made it, if you like, more organized. And second, the sentence, if you like, or the outcome of ostracism was political exile. But it was only exile of one person, only for 10 years. And during that time, his family and his property were protected. After 10 years, he could come back and join politics again. And this, in the context of antiquity, was the most limited form of exile you can get, compared to exile as a result of a judicial decision that has condemned someone for treason, or compared to exile during the oligarchic times or tyrannical times. This was a very, very restricted form of exile. So in the context of antiquity, it was a way to moderate politics, and it gave the grounds for Aristotle to describe the demos as a customarily mild force. Now, the second aspect of ostracism that is important to keep is that it had a quota, participation quota, 6,000 citizens. Now, 6,000 citizens was 10% of the Athenian demos, but because there were no political parties at the time, no one could control or influence more than his actual entourage of 20-30 followers. So it was impossible to influence such a large crowd of 6,000 citizens. So the participation quota was another way to prevent this instrument from manipulation. Okay, so what is the relevance of ostracism for contemporary democracy? Why does it matter to look at it now? I try to emphasize the two main reasons that it makes sense to look at it. One is, what do we actually do today to protect democracies from anti-democratic parties and actors? So today a lot of democracies ban parties or prohibit hate speech and so on, whereas in the ostracism grants another possibility of having a political procedure in place that where the demos is the primary responsible for protecting democracy from subversion. So it is a contribution to the field of, or criticism if you like, to the field of militant democracy, an alternative way to look at it. And the second is how we look at the democratic deselection today. We do have, especially here in the States, in Switzerland and the UK, introduced a few months ago, someone in March, the recall elections, which is a process of democratic deselection by vote. Someone is removed from office, not sent to exile, but removed. This happens to monitor against corruption and political malfeasance. The big difference of ostracism and recall is that ostracism was regular and could take place maximum once a year, and had a very large participation quorum, whereas recall has mutatis mutandis, a small, in most cases, not in Canada, a small participation quorum and can take place anytime a petition collects enough signatures. So we can learn from ostracism that there are certain procedural features that can protect a democratic deselection process from being manipulated.